Hi, I'm Pete Shau. You may know me from the RTO Show Podcast, but today I'm doing something a little bit different. APRO and Wow Brands have launched a special project to bring the story of our industry to life like never before. They've asked me to sit down with some of the true legends of rent-to-own, capturing their stories, their impact, and their vision for the future. And now I get to share those conversations with you straight from the legends themselves. All of this leads to something groundbreaking, though. A new book, The Rent-to-Own Revolution, A Definitive History of Advocacy and Consumer Access, written by APRO CEO Charles Smitherman and Wow Brands CEO Brian Krast. The book explores the grassroots of RTO, the advocacy that has defined it, and the future that we're building together. Here's where you come in. We're giving away free copies once the book is released. Just head over to the RTORevolution.com and sign up for a chance to receive a copy in early 2026. Don't miss the chance to be among the first to hold this piece of RTO history. That's RTORevolution.com. Check it out and become a part of RTO history. Hello and welcome to the RTO Show. I'm your host, Pete Shau, and today I have the legend, the man, the walking legend, Bill French. He has been doing this twice as long as I've been here. I'm going to tell you right now, no, I have been dying to talk to Bill for a long time. We've kind of been going back and forth, had some mishaps in the beginning, and I've really been wanting to talk to him because, I mean, honestly, Bill, you have been doing this for so long. You've seen so many facets of this business. I mean, literally from its starting, from the infantile beginnings all the way to what it is today. And I mean, you've seen all of it. Now, right now, just so that everybody's aware, Bill is the vice president he's vice president of the rent-to-own sales at O'Rourke. Now, I know that everybody in the RTO space probably have heard of O'Rourke. And if you haven't, guys, you've been under a rock. They do everything nowadays. Bill, it's so great to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, bud. How about you, Pete?
I'm excellent. Listen, you know, every time that I see you out on the shows, every time that I see you doing something, you have more energy than I do. I don't know how you do it. I got to tell you, I love it. I love watching it. But it seems like that comes from a passion from being in this business.
Most definitely. I think attitude is everything. You got to have a positive attitude. Wake up every morning with a little fire in your butt, and the day will turn out to be a good day.
And get it done, right? Well, we are on the Legends series. Now, as you guys know, we have plenty of legends that are on here. Some of them don't go half as far. Some of them nowhere near as far as Bill has. 1972 is when he started in the industry, but he has moved his way up in so many different ways. But I wanted to go back, Bill. I want to go back to where you all started, where it came from. First off, how did you find the rent-to-own business? I mean, when you started doing it, it wasn't anywhere near as known as it is now. How did you find a rent-to-own business, and how did you get started?
I was working a retail territory in South Arkansas for a company called Frank Line Company, and I'm driving down the street in Texarkana, Texas, and I see a storefront that says rent-to-own. And in the window of the store, they had vacuum cleaners and electrophonic stereos. So I went, I need to look at this. So I pull in, go into the store, and I'm looking around. This guy comes out of the back and said, "What am I going to do for you?" I said, "It's not what you can do for me. It's what I can do for you, buddy."
That's right. That's right.
He said, "Well, what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I sell RCA TVs." And I thought he was going to have a heart attack. He said, "Oh man, I need to talk to you." And I said, "Well, tell me about rent-to-own. What is this? How does it work?" And the guy's name was Bob White. He was a brother of a guy named Bill White who started Action TV in Dallas. And he started there in Texarkana with one store. And about 5 or 6 years later, he sold his company, which was called Crown Rental, for several $1 million. And the rest is history there. But that's how I got started. And it took me, because when I went back to my boss and the CFO of my company and said, "Hey, I found this company that does rent-to-own." They look at me and go, "What the hell is rent-to-own?" And I said, "Well, here's what he does." First thing they asked me, and in retail, you have a UCC agreement with retail dealers that allows you to repossess product if they default on paying you. First thing they said, "Well, is this guy rents it to somebody who owns the product?" And I said, "I don't know." So I make notes on all these questions they have. And I'll go back 2 weeks later when I'm in that same area and talk to Bob again and say, hey, I got a bunch of questions, buddy. You got to help me here. You got to help me help you. It took me several weeks to even get him a credit line because they didn't understand it. And the banks didn't understand it then either. They had no understanding of what rent-to-own was really about. But he wound up being my largest customer out of my entire territory, which everybody else in my territory was retail. But that was the start of rent-to-own to me, and it's been an amazing ride.
I mean, so Bob and Bill, I take it they were brothers?
They were brothers, total opposites. Bill White, who's dead now, God rest him, was a very religious, very, very, very principled, very nice man. Conversely, Bob was very principled, but he was a wild man. He liked to drink and party, have a big time, and they weren't really close at all. But he'd watched what his brother was doing in Dallas and decided to try to start his own deal, and he did it very well.
So when you're talking about, so you walked in, so you were already a part of selling, the RCA TVs. What was the main issue, or just some of the issues? I shouldn't say the main issue, but what were some of the issues that you had to overcome to get them to do this? I mean, you said it took a couple weeks. So
It took
as they're
more than
looking
a
at
couple of
it,
weeks. It took quite a while to get him a credit line after going through and doing all the things you have to do to get anybody set up. But the major issues was, okay, how does the warranty work? Well, of course, rental dealers want their warranty to work from the date of their first rental, but making a manufacturer understand that when they have no knowledge of how the industry works was really hard at the outset to try to get them to understand how they take care of warranty.
how long did it take to get that done? Because I know it's not you just walk in, explain it, and now somebody knows. I mean, how difficult was that to get them to really say, okay, I understand this enough to be able to kind of work within these boundaries?
Well, initially, with the manufacturers, RCA being the manufacturer at that time, they didn't understand it at all. And I talked my bosses and the owner of my company into making sure we took care of Bob White for a year from the date of the first rental. And eventually, when they started seeing that volume, they began to go, it took a little while for us to really get the manufacturer's interest in doing rent to own. They thought it was silly, crazy. Today, they don't think it's so silly.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, when you're talking about volume, if they became the largest volume purchaser that you had, I couldn't imagine them saying no, right? So,
Well, go ahead.
so how did you end up with O'Rourke then?
Well, long, long history. I wound up when I worked for Frank Line, I wound up managing a branch, getting hired away from them and coming to Dallas and running a company in Dallas selling RCA. But there was some rent own going on here, and in Houston there was a company called Remco that was already established, and a lot of people that have been around will remember Remco. They were based in Houston, but that I made a trip to Houston personally and talked to them and got that thing going. But and at the same time, Early Tally was over in Wichita doing his thing, and there were people beginning to build a business with rent to own in different parts of the country. So it started gaining. Ernie started in 1965 in Wichita. By 1972, some other people were beginning to understand the business. Then when I came down here in 1981 or 1980 and went to the very first APRO meeting. Actually, Bill White was the guy. He called me and he said, Bill, we've got a meeting with a bunch of guys. We want to put together an association to represent our industry, and we're going to call it APRO. Would you come to that meeting? And I said, sure. And so I went to that meeting, and I was the only supplier of to the rent-to-own industry that went to that first APRO meeting, which was pretty
Wow.
interesting. It turned out all these years later, I'm on the board at APRO and very involved, and am thankful for the industry because the rent-to-own industry helped me feed my kids, get them educated, gave me a life that I would have never imagined. After I went to work in here, then I ran a company that did Zenith in Houston about a year later. And then 4 years later, I was hired by Zenith to be a VP over a region. And when that really began to, and because I was the only guy in the country that was really doing much rent to own, we want you to kind of help us figure this rent to own thing out. And we hired a guy by the name of Norm Smith, and there's an award that I have behind my desk, and it's the APRO Norm Smith Vendor of the Year Award. He was so influential in the industry that they actually named an award after him, and I won it after I moved over here. But no, it's been an interesting ride, and one that I've been very blessed to be involved in, because people don't realize how valuable this industry is to the consumer. There are thousands of people in this country who wouldn't have nice stuff in their homes if it weren't for rent to own.
What was happening in the early 1980s? You said that you went to the first APRO meeting in 81. What was happening in that time frame in the early 80s, 81, that you could say that, there was need for an advocacy group at that time?
Well, there was several guys that they brought into this. Jim Brown, who was a dealer in Wichita that had worked for Ernie Talley and then now was in his own business, they invited him down. So there were folks from Texas as well as other parts of the country, but primarily Texas dealers that sat down and carved out what they wanted to do and how they wanted to do it. And Ed from APRO was the first employee of APRO, and he just retired recently. He was the legal counsel for APRO for years and years and years, but he basically sat down with all these dealers and they figured out how to form APRO as an association. And he got it started. And not too long after that, they hired Bill Keese to be executive director. But it's been an interesting ride. And the people that I get a little aggravated with are the people that are in this industry that don't understand the value of APRO and don't get involved in it, because if it weren't for APRO, we might not have a business, period.
Well, we had the Gonzalez situation. We had the tax situation. I mean, there's a lot that APRO has been able to help with. And from your perspective, what challenges were those the type of challenges? Or were there other challenges that they were facing that they needed to make this advocacy? And just so you know, it is great to hear that you came on as a vendor, correct? At that time, you were selling to the RTO industry, but
That's correct.
they found it important enough to bring you on for counsel and to be a part of it at that point in time. What were they facing that was like, hey, this is something that we have going on. Not only do we need to have our dealers involved, we need to get our vendors involved as well.
Well, even back then, in 1981, there were some bad actors in our industry, and we needed to put together or establish best practices and figure out a way to protect our industry when somebody comes along and does something that's unethical. Or especially early on, a lot of people didn't really trust this industry because they didn't understand it. And over the years, we've been able to build an amazing industry, and that now is recognized nationwide and in a lot of other countries. But it's been a really wonderful thing to be a part of, to watch it become what it is today from where it was in 1980. More than anything else, the guys that were in that room wanted to figure out a way to make sure that the interests of the industry were served and that we were protected from bad actors. And there's still, I'm sure, some of them out there today, but with 47 state statutes that regulate our industry, and we really don't need a federal legislation. We don't want it, I don't think, either, because anytime you get the federal government involved, you're going to have problems.
We've gone back and forth on that issue. Edwin thinks exactly like you do. I think that getting the 47 states regulated was a win. Talking about the federal legislation and how that could affect us, both good and bad. He feels the same way. He's actually said the same thing to me on this very show about, you know what? It would cost a lot of money. And at the end of the day, do you really want the government in your business? At this point in time, we're regulated very well. We do a very good job at on the state level. And we do advocate this on the federal level so that the people can understand what's going on. But we do get by very well. I mean, this is almost a $10 billion industry year after year after year based on the way we have it regulated now. Everything that's going on in New York notwithstanding, I hope that we come out of that unscathed. But people don't really understand the industry, and I think that's another huge part of the advocacy side of APRO is reminding people, not only doing the legal aspect of it, but actually reminding them of what we've been through, and obviously where we're going in the future, and what we can do together as an advocacy group. How hard was it? Because you said that you came in with the RCA and then you started doing it with Zenith. How hard was it to get the other large vendors involved? Like, let's say Whirlpool and LG. Was that a struggle to get them to understand exactly what you understand today?
Back in the early 80s, for a while there, late 70s, early 80s, RCA and Whirlpool had a marketing agreement, and most dealers on the retail side, if they handled RCA and were in the appliance business, they also handled Whirlpool. And bringing Whirlpool into the fold, they've been a great supporter of the industry. Even though I don't sell a product, they were and are a great supporter of the industry back in the early 80s and recognized the opportunity. So Whirlpool, for a long time, Whirlpool pretty much dominated the rental side of the appliance business. And the folks like Crosley started recognizing the opportunity and became pretty good size suppliers to the industries. But the cool thing that I'm seeing today, Pete, that rental customers want the very same thing that you and I want.
Yes,
And
they
we're
do.
renting today. I'll give you a good example. I just sold one of my dealers 100 televisions that we're shipping this month for rent to own. Now, if you told me 5 years ago that I would be selling a 100 television to a rental dealer, I would have told you were nuts. But it is a
I'm with you.
reality. And things like high-end Samsung refrigerators that have, it's called a family hub, that has a screen on it, a computer in it. We're selling a lot of those. And I would never have imagined that we'd be able to sell that kind of product to a rent-to-own customer. But rent-to-own has become more and more and more high-end than I ever imagined that it would. There's still a place for entry-level, lead-price product, because in some cases that's all somebody can afford. But if we can find a way to put a rental rate on it, that rental customer wants the very same thing that you and I want. They will. And the other thing that happens, and you know it as well as I do, the higher end the product that you put in a rental customer's home, the better the keep rate, because they got some money invested in it. They're not going to let it come back. I mean, it's
Right.
pretty cool, very cool, actually.
Well, I'm glad that you said that, because Mr. Bill French also because you have been a part of, not only have you been a vendor for so long, you've been a part of APRO as a couple of different things, but right now you're on the vendor advisory committee. Is that correct?
That is correct. I'm the vice chair.
And you've been doing, and you've also been a liaison at some certain points in time. You've been a part of this almost from the get-go. How important has the vendor advisory committee been to APRO since its inception, and when was it incepted?
I think it's a partnership, obviously, with the dealers that are involved in APRO and on the board, but it very definitely has been important to have folks like myself and the other guys that have been involved over the years with me from the vendor side. When it comes down to what is needed to make a convention successful, for instance, what a vendors, APRO understands this, and so does the Trib Group also understands it, that there would not be these big conventions if it were not for vendor support and vendors embracing APRO and Trib. And by being involved with them, little things come up like having carpeting in the venue versus having to rent it in. There's a lot of little things that have come into play that have helped make these conventions better by having vendors, a vendor advisory committee that has ideas about, we all want the same thing. We all want to sell product. We want to sell it to the dealer. We want our dealer to be successful with the product. And how we present that product is incredibly important at these shows. So having the vendor input into what goes into a show has been very important. And
So, you mentioned trip, and there wasn't originally a trip. Now I know that I see you at the trip shows just as much as I see at the APRO shows because O'Rourke is very, very involved. And if you guys don't know, Bill French is involved in just about anything. If you have it going on, you're going to see Bill there. So, what started that created the ability for Trib to be so important to the RTO industry? Did you play a part in that? Did the vendors play a part in that?
I can't say that I played a part in that. Norm Smith, the guy I mentioned earlier that worked, I worked with at Zenith, I was in charge of a region of 17 states, but we put him in place at Zenith after I got there to manage and develop the rental channel for Zenith. And he was very instrumental in working with, well, before Dennis Shields, drawing a blank. I can see the guy's face right now.
John Blair?
John Blair. He was instrumental in working with John and helping John understand the value of putting together vendor programs. Whirlpool also worked really well with John Blair and put together vendor programs that offered rebates and incentives for buying the product. Then industry buying group, well, the biggest thing it's done is just help the smaller dealers get deals that they would never get if it weren't for somebody like Trib and or like APRO, but primarily Trib in that case. Because if you're a member, you get the same price as a little guy as the big guy gets and put you on a level playing field. So being a member of Trib or a good buying group, I think is, for somebody especially that's got more than a store or two, is essential to helping you be competitive.
Now, how advantageous has it been for O'Rourke to be a part of Trib or Nationwide?
Most definitely advantageous by working with them. In fact, we're getting ready to go to our fall meetings with Trib and present our programs for next year. But it's been by them supporting us and endorsing us as a vendor, it brought dealers to us that we might not have gotten. And we've also helped them. I've told more than one dealer, hey, if you want to be a success here, you need to get involved in Trib and you need to get involved in APRO, because Trib helps you with your buying and APRO helps keep you in business.
There you go. I don't think I could have said it any better than that. That is absolutely the truth. So, you mentioned warranty being one of the unique things that happened that came out of the rent-to-own sector. Hey, we really don't want the warranty to start when it lands because most likely it hasn't gone anywhere, it hasn't done anything. When we rent it is where it would be more beneficial for the warranty to start, because that also helps the customer and it helps us. We don't want to give it to them 3 months after it already started, has a 1-year warranty, and they only get 9 months worth of it. Is there anything else that, that came from rent to own that made some of the vendors rework how they've done everything?
Well, obviously the product mix and things of that nature have changed, but if you're really super involved in rent to own, you need to look at that business and buy to support and be a great supplier. Here we do everything at O'Rourke. We do retail, we do premium, we do military, we do rent to own. Our mix for rent to own is quite a bit different than it is for retail, because in rent to own, even though we do some high-end product, we don't do the super high-end product that we do at retail. So if you're going to be a really good supplier to rent to own, you need to understand the dealer's needs and what their customers' needs are and buy to be able to supply that on a timely basis. And we do forecasting. Our folks in the field, as well as we do forecasting based on the channel that we work in. So there's forecasting that we do that is specifically tied to what needs to be done to support the rent-to-own industry. And it's a little bit different than retail or premium or even military. So to be a good supplier, you need to understand your dealer's needs and buy to supply those needs.
Absolutely. Can you tell me what a custom RTO vendor program looks like as opposed to maybe a retail program? What are some of the differences on that? Primary
differences are on the retail side. There's a lot of programming done that for instance, you may, for a retailer, you do a kitchen program that if you buy one to show and one to go in all these various SKUs that make up a kitchen, you get some extra discounts. We have to tailor that a little bit differently for rental than we do for rent to own because of the needs for somebody. For instance, rent to own, I can't tell you the last time I sold a dishwasher or an over the range microwave, things of that nature. Those things have to be looked at harder for retail. We don't even look at it for rent to own. So when we structure something, any kind of a program for rental, we look at what, if it's a kitchen program, it may be a refrigerator and a range. Television, it may be a television and a sound bar or a home theater system. But you just have to kind of look at the needs of what, and we get a lot of input. But the great thing is from our customers, they'll go, Bill, if you do something like this for us, it would help us and it would help your business. So there's another key period to any business, and in particular this one. You have 2 ears for a reason. The best people on the planet at doing business are the best listeners. If you listen, your customer will tell you what they want. And then if you can deliver it, you become a valued supplier. And I talk a lot, but I try to listen more than I talk.
Well, Bill, at this point in time, I mean, you have so much knowledge and so much experience. We've got to listen because you've got a lot to say. I mean, everything that you're saying on here is definitely something that I've been really interested in hearing about. Another thing that I'm interested in hearing about is 24 years ago, you decided to make a change to O'Rourke Sales. That's about 2021. Am I right? Is that when you
That is
came on to
exactly
O'Rourke?
right.
So in 2021, what were you doing that made you decide, you know what, O'Rourke is where I want to be? And and then you climb your way all the way up to being vice president of rent-to-own sales. Can you tell us a little bit about how all that worked?
Well, it's interesting how the good Lord works, I'm telling you, because Zenith had been bought out and I'd worked for them for about 5 years. LG had previously bought Zenith out of bankruptcy, and I was working for LG as a VP. And in their infinite wisdom, they decided they were going to take the company down from $1 billion company to a $100 million company and then rebuild it. And in November of 2020, they called me into corporate headquarters in Glenview, Illinois, and said, Bill, we are going to shut down all the branches, and we want you to stay on in your region, shut it down, service, parts, sales, close out your offices, and but in order, so of course that was a big shock to me, and I was not happy about that. But when that happened, I said, well, based on what you're telling me, folks, it looks like I need to start sending out resumes. And they said, no, don't do that. We'll give you a severance package, pay you for an extra year. They put together a whole package, but I had to stay until June 3rd, 2021. And as luck would have it, in February, the O'Rourke's called me and said, hey, we would like to hire you. They don't know all this stuff is going on with the LG at the time because I can't tell them. So I interviewed with them, made a deal, and said, problem is I can't go to work for you until July the 1st. And this was in February. But I said, I'm excited to come on board with you, but I can't do it till July the 1st. And they said, well, why not? And I said, well, I've got an employment agreement with LG that says I have to stay with them till June 30th for a major bonus, as well as insurance and pay for another year. Oh my goodness. Anyway, they agreed to that. And so I stayed, got my thing done with LG, came on board with them July the 1st. And I was really hired by them to manage the group business, Nationwide, NATM. Back then there was Key Southwest. There were several buying groups, and I dealt with all of them, and they were trying to figure out, O'Rourke's were trying to figure out how to get into those groups. So we get that started, but about 6 months in, Jeff O'Rourke says, you've been involved in rent to own. What do you think? And I said, well, there's a huge opportunity there. We're not capitalizing on it. He said, what do you think about shifting over and you taking over and you just run the rent to own business for us? And I said, well, I would love that because I know there's an opportunity there. I know how to do it. And I know a lot of the dealers already. So it's a natural fit for me. So that's what happened. And that first, when I took the job managing the rent-to-own channel, they'd done $1.5 million in 6 months.
Wow.
By the end of the year, we had done about 6.5 million, and we've grown from. I'll never tell anybody what our number is, but we have grown from that point to being the largest vendor other than Ashley Furniture in this industry. Period.
Oh, I know it. I know it. Every time I go, the O'Rourke booth seems to get bigger and bigger and bigger. You have a lot of amazing people that work for you over there.
Oh, we're very blessed. We've assembled a really good team. I'm probably going to sound a little bit. I'm not sure how it sounds, but I believe I have the best team around me uh, in the rental industry. And I also have the best management supporting what we need to do in the rental industry every day. I mean, they're willing to make, if we believe, if I can present a plan to them that makes sense, they've never said no in 24 years.
Well, I mean, you know what you're doing, especially with the history that you have. I know Kevin, I know Felix. You guys do a great job over there. You were saying something earlier, the advocacy and, kind of how important it is. How do vendors support the APRO events? How do vendors support the legislative advocacy or industry education? How do the vendors be a part of that? How does O'Rourke and Bill French be a part of that?
Well, number one, I've done it for years, and I will do it again. I'm going to tentatively probably retire at the end of next year. Because I'm 81 years old now. I'm going to have to leave it sometime.
You know what? I can't imagine a day that Bill French is not in rent to own.
Well, Bill French can't imagine it either, because I love coming to work every day. I love dealing with. My whole goal every day is to try to help anybody that I deal with or we deal with, whether it's one of our sales associates or a customer, be more successful. And if I can do that, then I'm the guy who wins the most. It's pretty easy and it's fulfilling. But no, as far as APRO, the legislative conference, I think every vendor, every dealer ought to be involved in that legislative conference and experience it to understand the importance of APRO. Because those folks on the Hill, especially every couple of years they roll over, most of them can't spell rent on, let alone understand what we do. So to go in and sit down and say, hey, we're not here looking for a bill. We're not here looking for anything. We just want to explain to you, make sure you understand what we're doing so that if anything comes up, you can yell at us and help us work our way through anything that might come along. It's just and it gets to where when you go in these, especially if you've done it a while, you go from office, you'll see the same face, but they may be working for a different representative or a different senator, but they remember you because of something you said to them last year or the year before. But it's very, very, very crucial that the people that enjoy the fruits of this industry, whether it be a supplier or a rent-to-own dealer, they need to be involved in APRO because without APRO, you might not have a business.
When did you start going to the legislative conference for APRO?
I actually, because prior to coming to work for O'Rourke, we had people in the rental channel at LG that would do that. But as soon as I came to work for O'Rourke that first year, probably 2021, maybe 2022, I started going to the legislative conference. And
Now, is that 20? You said 2021 or 2022 or 2001 and 2002?
Oh, 2001, 2002. I'm sorry.
Okay.
My bad, Pete. Thank you for correcting me. No, it's probably 2001, 2002. And then, about 3 or 4 years in, uh, there was a guy named Ellison Kreider that was uh, a dealer in South Texas that was the head of the vendor advisory committee. And he was getting into his own business. So he and Bill Keese called me and said, hey, we'd like for you to get on the vendor advisory committee and become the vice chair. And I said, well, how do I do that? They said, well, you have to be voted in, but if you say you'll do it, I guarantee you'll get voted in. So I did, and the rest is history.
Now, in Texas, there was the Henry B. Gonzalez thing where, it was a legislator who was trying to end what we know as rent to own. When that was happening, where were you as a part of this? Were you able to take part in some of what happened? Did you know about what was going on at that particular time when they were trying to basically end rent to own as we know it?
I wasn't actively involved in that effort, but I was very much aware of it. So no, I can't take any credit for that. But the Henry B. Gonzalez deal, it's kind of ironic that over the years we've had rent-to-own conventions in the Henry B. Gonzalez Convention Center.
We sure have.
And he's the very guy who tried to put us out of business.
Talk about ironic, right? And then
Yeah.
and then we go in there and have more successes year after year after year after year after that.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, how would you describe the mutual dependency that rent-to-own dealers have with their vendors?
I'm not sure how to explain that other than to say this business is very, very, very much relationship driven. If you're going to be successful in this business as a vendor, you need to get acquainted with the people you're doing business with, learn about who they are, what they're about. In a lot of cases, a lot of these people, I know their kids, I know their grandkids, and am genuinely interested in their lives and what they do. And I think that people, when you're dealing with people, they can sense whether you're sincere or not, or whether you care about them or not, or whether you're just trying to get an order. I'm never just trying to get an order. I'm trying to develop a relationship that is mutually beneficial, that says, anything you need, Mr. Dealer, if I can help you, I will. And that may even mean that I may not sell you anything. It may mean I send you in another direction because I don't have what you need, but I'll try to help you any way I can. Hopefully I have something I can help you with, but if I don't, I'll still try to help you. You got to care about people. You got to care about long-term relationships. If you love, it's amazing, Pete. If you love people, you get that love back, and it's just the way I live my life.
Well, I could tell that, Bill. That's the way you do it. That's the way you've always been. When you go back to the point where we're talking about you're selling RCA TVs to the rent-to-own industry, and Whirlpool was involved a little bit in front. What was the progression? You said, you did TVs first. You did the RCA TVs first, and we're talking about early 70s. What was the progression of inventory after that you dealt with? Obviously, it was TVs first. Was it appliance second, or was it anything else second? What came through?
In the 70s, it started out with the big seller in the rent-to-own industry was 19-inch black and white televisions to begin with. And that evolved into color television in the late 60s, early 70s. And obviously lead laundry, washers and dryers. From my perspective, I've never done a lot in furniture, but I've done everything you can in TV and or appliances. But the evolution is, it started out, even the rent-to-own dealer's mentality was, I got to have the cheapest TV I can get so I can rent it. Or I got to have the cheapest washer and dryer that I can acquire so I can rent it. But over time, obviously that has evolved a little bit. It keeps changing, and even today it keeps changing, because today there's more high-end product done. We'll give you where we were then. Back then, the other thing we did a lot of, and it was back in the early days, was big stereos that had lights, big old speakers that there was nothing behind the speaker grill, but it looked impressive, and in some cases sounded okay, but not great. But we did a lot of that kind of stuff. Those things have all evolved, just like on the retail side, over the years. And a good example today that we didn't even have back then, our fastest growing category of product is gaming towers and gaming systems, like PS5s, Xboxes, that kind of product, as well as gaming towers and monitors. That category is surpassing television in volume, because you rent a gaming tower and a monitor, that's in the same volume as renting like 375-inch TVs today. I mean, the dynamic has changed in terms of what our dealers are really renting and what they want. Television is still a big part of our business, but it's not the biggest part anymore. It's part of it. 25 years ago when I started here, 24, television drove the bus for us for many years as being the highest volume product. That's now, it's still there and it's still viable, but because prices have come down so much and new products have come to the forefront, they're not nearly as impactful for us in terms of volume and what we do. But we don't want to turn any of that down because that business is still there. It's just changed.
Now, the tariff situation is something that a lot of people talk about. They say, "Oh, tariffs are going to change the world in the United States. It's going to change everything. It's not going to be the same. Tariffs are going to make a lot of things more expensive to get, harder to buy." As you've gone through the generations of what you've sold, going from one product to the next product to the next product, has there been anything like a tariff in the back end and years ago that kind of put a strain on some of your dealers to be able to purchase, or some of what you had to be able to say this is a good product, but the price went up for whatever reason, whether it be manufacturing costs, shipping costs, anything like that?
Well, going back early on, all of our products pretty much we sold to rent to own back in the 70s were manufactured in the United States. Appliances, television, RCA was manufactured plants all over the country, Bloomington, Indiana, Indianapolis. They had cabinet plants over in the Carolinas, but Zenith at that time the same, Magnavox. The names have changed. A lot of the names that were big in our industry 50 years ago don't even exist today. A good example is Zenith. When I got in this business, over 50% of the television business was done by RCA and Zenith. They pretty much split it down the middle. And then you had Magnavox and Motorola and Sylvania, different brands that Admiral that did a little business, but over half the business was with two brands. And also back then, Whirlpool and GE were over 50% of the business in appliances. Now, that's changed dramatically over the years with the changes in the way, but the changes that had some effect while living through that was manufacturing moving out of the U.S. to either Mexico or the Orient, China, Taiwan, Vietnam. Those things changed the way we do business. Lead times changed because all of a sudden, well, I wouldn't say all of a sudden, but you went from having product manufactured here that was manufactured in a plant, put on a truck and delivered to your warehouse. Now it's manufactured in a plant, put on a boat that takes 6-8 weeks to get here. So the way you plan your business had to change with the way the manufacturing was done. So that changed the way we had to look at our forecasting, look at our needs, and we had to get better at planning our business because the plants were no longer in the U.S. It was a different business, and is a different business.
It seems like it could definitely change the aspect of it. When you're talking about a week lead time to 6-week lead time. So I work as a distributor, correct?
Yes.
So basically, the role of a distributor is to get all these products in and then ship from the warehouses here after they've already come. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now that you have that ability, because we're storing it here, it's been placed. That's what the cycles you're talking about. We have to know what probably is going to sell within the next 6 to 8 weeks. We've got to put that order. It comes in, and then we sell it early on. So when it comes to new product that are coming in, something that a new idea, a new stereo, a new computer, how far out do you have to order it before you actually have that product in your distribution cycle?
Depends upon what it is, and if it's a new product, I'll give you a good example. I mentioned gaming towers as one of our bigger, fastest growing categories for us. We developed SkyTech is our go-to brand in gaming towers, and we were looking at a way to do that, and we looked at traditional manufacturers, and their stuff wasn't all that cool looking. Plus, they were not too sure about rent to own, and just like folks in the TV business weren't 50 years ago. Well, how do you know this is going to work? Well, we know it's going to work, but Anyway, we found a supplier in SkyTech, and Jane Ardone, who's our vice president in charge of that area of procuring product, met with them. He sat down with their engineers and literally designed what we wanted in a gaming tower with lights, the fan, the features that we wanted in a gaming tower, and designed what he believed, and he's been dead right on it, would work for rent to own. Our first order, a pallet of towers, is 18 pieces. Our first order was 18 pieces 5 years ago, and they were sold before we ever got them. Last year, I can't give you a number, but we sold many, many, many thousands of those gaming towers. But when you got a new product and you know what it's going to do and how it's going to develop, obviously you got to have a little caution and try to figure it out. But been very successful with it. But the lead times there, again, that product is assembled and put together here in the States, but a lot of the chips and a lot of the components come from China or Vietnam, Taiwan, someplace across the water. So forecasting there again, you got to look at lead times, and you're looking 6, 8, some cases 3 months out from when you decide you're going to do something till you actually get that finished product in your barn to ship to a dealer. Right. So the planning side of this business has gotten more difficult, but also with programming of computers and the way we can manage data, it's not as difficult maybe as it sounds, because we got a lot of information at our fingertips to help us manage that kind of thing.
Not as difficult as it used to be, right? Now that AI is involved 100%. And you have all these computer cycles. So looking back on your career from like the 1970s to today, what is one thing about this industry that still surprises you?
Probably more than anything else, I would say, Pete, is the great thing, is how much it changes from one year to the next in terms of what we're selling, what our customers want, what they need. I mean, you got dealers renting tires. You got dealers renting. Somebody told me 10 years ago I'd be selling purses that people would rent. I would have told them you were crazy. But we do a lot of just the things that, especially in the rent-to-own industry, the products that people are willing to rent because they have a desire for it. And that's the other thing I think, too, is a lot of these products that we sell to our dealers and they rent are kind of status symbols for their customer, whether it be a big television or a Michael Kors purse or the refrigerator, the Family Hub refrigerator that has a computer in it and a screen. I think in a lot of cases, those are not only they fill a need, but they also are somewhat of a status symbol for the family that's doing it.
Well, I mean, I think you nailed it on the head. When you walk into somebody's house and you're going, oh, you're a rent-to-own customer, but oh my God, look at the 100-inch TV. Oh my God, look at that custom-built rig that you have over there that can play the AAA games that are coming out in today's world, 4K, 8K, and everything thereof. Or they go to get a drink out of the fridge and it's just something out of this world. I agree with you 100%. It's not what it used to be, and nowadays people are willing to pay whatever they need to in order to get what they want. And it's not always a need, because you obviously have the needs. I mean, that's literally what this business was built on, the people who have needs, who don't have the ability. But then it's also transitioned to, well, this is a want, and I want this. I think it's a great idea, but I want to have the larger TV. I want to have the faster gaming computer. I want to have, the shiny stereo, whether it makes light, whether it has lights or not. It's also turned into a choice. This is what I can have, but this is also what I want. And how do we marry those together?
One of the best keep rate products that we sell to the rent-to-own industry is a gaming tower or a PS5, something to do with gaming. None of those are needs. Those are nothing more than wants. But the keep rate there is better than it is on, they might give up their kids' bunk beds before they give up their gaming system.
I hope, but you might exactly be right. Well, I got to ask you, as we wind down, what do you want people to remember about the vendors who helped build Rent to Own?
As much as anything, that anybody, if you're a dealer or if you're a vendor, the goal is, looking at it from either side, is you want a partner. You develop a partnership that is mutually beneficial, and if you care about one another, things are going to work every day. But you got to care. You got to be sensitive to the needs in any business relationship. It has to be win-win. The vendor has to win. The dealer has to win. And if, as a vendor, you feel like, or when you're renting a customer, if you feel like, oh man, I won that one, I took advantage of that person, in the long run, you are going to lose. You need for whomever you're dealing with to feel like you may be winning, but they also have to feel like they are winning. And you need to feel like they're winning. You both have to win. If you do that, and pretty simple, don't ever make a commitment that you can't keep. You're not sure that you're able to keep. Always, if you always look after the customer's needs first, you're always going to win.
Well, this is a relationship business, right? I mean,
100%.
In the end, we build and we live by the relationships that we've built, whether you're coming up from the 70s, like Mr. Bill French has, the one and only, who has bred it up through the decades, whether you're coming into it now, it's about based on the relationship and the ability to, nurture that relationship. And, I do what I say I'm going to do. You do what you say you're going to do, and everybody be upfront, because not everybody's perfect and things happen, but let's be upfront and always work on our obligations and make it happen. Bill, I can't tell you how important it is to have you on the Legend series, to do some of the things that you've done throughout all the years, to be able to recount some of the things that you've been able to be a part of and work on and do. It has absolutely been, just amazing to talk with you. I'm so glad that you've been on here. 24 years worth of work, 54 years in the rent-to-own industry. It doesn't get much better than that. I mean, I think Bill French knows just about everything there is to know on your side of the fence. Guys, I want to tell you, I appreciate you joining us for the Legends series. It has been so fun being able to speak to some of these legends and kind of learn a lot about the rent-to-own industry and what they've poured into it, the importance they've had. If you have any questions, please reach out to the podcast. It's Pete at the RTO Show Podcast.com. If you have any questions for Bill, reach out, send me an email, and I will make sure that he gets an answer for you, because I'm sure there are a lot more things that you want to know that I didn't even get to yet. We want to tell you, if you want to look us up, we are on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube, where you're going to see this. Please send me a DM if you have any questions. Make sure you subscribe and like. You can also go to the website at www.thertoshowpodcast.com, buy some swag. You can also support the show on there. Bill, I appreciate you being here. I loved everything. I love it so much. I hate to see that there might be an end to this, but I'm going to tell you guys, as long as Bill is around, I will be around, and we're going to be looking forward to that. And if you have a party, Bill, you've got to invite me, because we're going to have one heck of a retirement party. But I will tell you guys, as always, thank you for being here, and make sure that you get your collections low to get your sales high. Have a great one.
Thank you, Pete.
Hey everyone, it's Pete Shau here from the RTO Show Podcast, and I want to tell you about a company that's making a real difference in the rent-to-own space, Wow Brands. I've seen firsthand how they approach marketing, and let me tell you, it's not just about ads. Wow Brands builds complete digital ecosystems designed specifically for the rent-to-own industry. Their e-commerce and lead generation strategies are built to bring in qualified leads. And did I mention that they are actively working with the rent-to-own industry while also being members of APRO and TRIB? Listen, these folks are passionate problem solvers. They don't just slap something together. They design, build, and scale the kind of digital retail tools your business needs and your customers actually want. So if you're serious about growing, reach out to Wow Brands at wowbrands.com. I trust them, and I think you will too.